Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me? All right. Hey, thank you, Sam. So my middle name is David. Well, I guess it's time to go. I'll see you later. Nice meeting you all. My middle name is David, and that's where the Joshi D comes from. On Facebook back then, to distinguish myself from all the other Josh Roberts in the world, I put my full name, D. Roberts. And Sam and my wife are the only people that actually call me Joshi D. Although the other day, my 5-year-old came up to me and goes, "Hey, Joshi D." So I blame her mother for that, since she hasn't met Sam yet. About a long time ago, when I was 10, that's almost 40 years ago now, my family packed up all of our belongings and we moved from Los Angeles, where I was born and raised, to a small agricultural community of about 5,000 people near the Mexico and Arizona borders. There's this little town called Holtville, California, 20 miles from Mexico and about 50 miles from Yuma, Arizona. Really the middle of nowhere. You've probably heard of Yuma only because of Johnny Cash and the movie, right? And we lived there for about 5 years, but this was a significant transition or move in my life. Not only because I had spent the first 10 years of my life primarily in Los Angeles, and now we were moving to this farm town of 5,000 people, but also because I was in the year of transition from elementary school into junior high. That's what we used to call it. Remember junior high? And you can imagine the feelings and the emotions of making not only one big transition, but two at this pivotal time in my life. And I, for whatever reason, started school a little bit early, and so I was pretty young when this transition happened. I was, I believe, 10 years old going into junior high school. It was 6th grade, so kind of like we call middle school today, but I was pretty young, and so these were two significant transitions happening within a very short amount of time. And one of the things that happens when you go into junior high school, some of us can remember that, or some of us might be able to look forward to that, but one of the big things that happens when we're in that age group is you're transitioning from being with kids that are just barely out of diapers now into like these big people all of a sudden. You're no longer with little kids, you're with the big kids. And that is a difficult place in and of itself to try and find where you fit in and where you belong. But then again, moving from a mega city where, for fun, one of the things that we would do, my wife laughs at me. She grew up in central Kentucky, very close to Lexington, Kentucky. And one of the things that I did for fun as a kid would stand on our back porch and overlook the cinder block wall of my backyard and watch the cars go by. That's what I did for fun. I would count them, or I would claim that car as mine, and that's what you did when you grew up in a city. And all of a sudden now I'm moving to this place where people, and this is not a slam on people, but they were wearing Wrangler jeans and boots. And I had never seen this before in my life. I was used to tennis shoes and shorts and jeans and having fun in different ways than you would have fun in a small community. And so as I walked on to the junior high campus for the very first time, escorted, of course, by my mother in this new community, I was wondering, where do I fit in this place? Where do I belong? And that sense or that feeling of belonging, regardless of your background and your history or your experiences or even your culture, which I'm sure is very different than mine, is a common experience that we all have had, whether it's been in transition into junior high school, or it's starting a new job, or having to move to a new place. Sometimes it's other things in our life that shift and change, and all of a sudden we're now trying to discover where we belong. Whether it's these transitions that I've spoken of or it's other ones, no matter our backgrounds or our cultures, we all struggle with finding our place. I found a very significant quote that I'm going to talk about here in just a minute about what is the difference. But this morning, I want us to examine in our own lives and begin to think in our own lives, what is significant about those transitions, and how do we move into a place of belonging and acceptance? Because I feel like that is such a universal and common experience for us all. We might be able to fit in, but what is the difference between fitting in and truly belonging to a community. You know, for many in this quest to have a feeling of belonging, we can pursue unbalanced or unhealthy things. I have a friend of mine who actually doesn't live very far from here who is a counselor, and I asked him, like, what are some of the unhealthy practices or unhealthy things that we can pursue in trying to satisfy that feeling of belonging that sometimes can lead to an unhealthy lifestyle? And we talked about where these unhealthy habits of satisfying ourselves in other ways to achieve this sense of belonging. And for some of us, it isn't necessarily, we don't think of it as unhealthy, but it can be the pursuit of achievement. We feel like if we pursue certain things or can achieve certain accomplishments, whether that's education or in our career, or maybe for you it's getting married and having a family, or whatever sense that brings you like this, I've accomplished or I've arrived. Those can be ways in which we pursue unhealthy things in order to draw attention to ourselves or have these feelings of belonging. And there are other destructive behaviors like chemical dependency and other pursuits like my friend called it digital satisfaction. And I'm like, what is digital satisfaction? But those ways in which we pursue a numbing or a satisfaction or a sense of escape through digital means. So it could be something as simple as social media. It could be something like just vegging out and watching something on Netflix. Or in extreme cases, it can be the pursuit of things that are very controlling, like pornography, which is very easily available online. So there can be a multitude of ways in which we can pursue this sense of belonging and satisfaction, which I believe, and as we look here in just a moment to the scriptures, is only truly satisfied in understanding relationship with God and his people. And so this morning I'd like us to look at 1 John, and we're going to read chapter 5, verses 1 through 6, and we're going to see what the scriptures teach us or reveal to us about what does it truly mean to find love and belonging in the person of Jesus. So 1 John 5, 1 through 6 tells us, everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ is born of God. And everyone who loves the Father loves his child as well. And this is how we know that we love the children of God, by loving God and carrying out his commands. In fact, this is love for God, to keep his commands. And his commands are not burdensome, for everyone born of God overcomes the world. This is the victory that has overcome the world, even our faith. Who is it that overcomes the world? Only the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God. This is the one who came by water and blood, Jesus Christ. He did not come by water only, but by water and blood. And it is the Spirit who testifies, because the Spirit is truth. In her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, Brené Brown explains a significant difference between what it means to belong versus what it means to fit in. And I really love this explanation because I believe it really speaks to kind of the human condition. It says, fitting in is all about assessing our situation and becoming who you need to be accepted. Belonging, on the other hand, doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. I want to repeat that because, like, as I read that, I just kind of really impacted me, and it really, I felt it was like so simple yet profound, and I feel like it can, we really need to kind of chew on that for a second, because we all fall victim to this desire to belong or to fit in. But there is a difference, and that fitting in is, again, about assessing a situation and becoming who you need to be accepted, whereas belonging doesn't require us to change who we are, it requires us to be who we are. And I want you to imagine being part of a healthy family, a community, or group. And that may be a challenge for you. You know, depending on our upbringing and our experiences, imagining a healthy group or family or even church can be a challenge. But what would it look like to be welcomed into a safe community without having to change who you are? What if all that was required of you to belong was just to be who you already are? Psychologists tell us that the need to be loved and the need to belong is one of the most basic human needs. You may remember from middle school or junior high school the Maslow's hierarchy of need that we saw in a triangle position. But after food and shelter and safety, the desire to belong and be loved is the next greatest need in the pursuit of human existence and the human experience. And at the end of the day, we all crave the type of love and belonging that is exemplified by this explanation of just being accepted for who we are. Being human means to crave, to belong to a healthy community. And in our passage this morning, it makes a very bold claim to people about belonging. And you may have missed it because it's just an inferred truth, but as you read the entirety of 1 John, as you come to this passage, it just reiterates what John is constantly telling us throughout this scripture. And it tells us that those who believe that in Jesus and that he is God or the Son of God, that he is more than just a moral teacher, but that he is the Christ. That's John's claim here, is that those that believe that Jesus is the Christ, so the one chosen by God to be our welcome mat into his family. That's really kind of what it means by, in this passage, of Jesus being like the Messiah or the Anointed One. There's a lot of ideas and there's a lot of truths that are behind that, but essentially, Jesus is the pathway or the welcome mat into God's family. It makes this very bold claim that in this process, we are welcomed into God's family. And that we immediately begin to participate and enjoy the benefits that previously only belonged to Jesus. We gain access to God himself, the Father. As we enter into this family, as God accepts us and welcomes us in, we immediately have access to God ourselves. That our needs and our anxieties and all the things that we have, even the joys in our life, we can bring them to God. And you may think, well, why do I want to bring them to God? Why would I want to bring my anxieties or even my joys and experience to God? What is the benefit or what is that? I have found out that when you're in a loving relationship, you want to share things with people that you love. The biggest picture that I can think about this, or the biggest illustration that I can picture in my own life, is my 5-year-old daughter. My 5-year-old daughter, her name is Junia, and every single day, she loves to either paint, color, or draw. She'll do it in our home. She'll do it when she goes to school. And every single day after she creates this image or colors this picture or draws something, she immediately wants to run up to me or her mother and share, look what I did, Daddy. Do you see this? Do you see this? She has in her mind accomplished something that she's most proud of, and she doesn't want to just keep it to herself. She wants to bring it to her dad or her mom and share this experience with her. When she falls, as she often does, and when she stubs her toe or has a hangnail, which happens because she has inherited my brittle nails. But when she has these things, she immediately comes to one of us as well and wants us to share in that experience with her and bring her help that she needs to get rid of her hangnail or to just hug and embrace her. These are the images that God gives us to call us into this type of relationship. Because God makes himself available to us through Jesus to bring our worries, our anxieties, our stresses, our joys and our celebrations and our accomplishments as well to him. Because in the same way that I want to help my daughter when she is crying, and in the same way I want to help her remove that hangnail, or in the same way that I want to celebrate the art that she has created, the Lord wants to celebrate you in that manner and wants to aid you in that manner. He desires that intimacy with you, and he desires that relationship with you. He desires to express his love to you, to make you feel welcomed into his life and into his reality. He wants to be that source of belonging that we all crave and need. Because of Jesus, we gain access to this Father that loves us and welcomes us into his existence and all the things that it brings us. You know, in addition to gaining access to the Father because of Jesus, we actually gain siblings, or sometimes called brothers and sisters in the church. As God's children, as we enter into this relationship, it tells us in the passage that we become children of God, is that we're born of God. We now enter into relationship with the Father's other children. We now have a larger family of people who have also found love and belonging in Jesus. And that is what unites us as the church. Siblings now have the chance to love and welcome into our lives other people that are also craving that belonging love. That belonging and love that we all desire is not just fully satisfied in our relationship with the Father, but God has designed us for communal relationship of a loving, truly sincere community that will love and welcome us regardless of who we are. There are no conditions that God places upon you or me and to be welcomed into his family. He accepts us and receives us as we are. And as people of God, as children of God, who have brothers and sisters now or have siblings in his family, we are called to welcome and embrace others and love others in our lives. God intentionally is going to place you in a community that you will not only have the opportunity to be loved, but also to love. We are called into a beautiful yet messy family, striving to offer authentic love and belonging and commitment to each other. And this life is much richer than the superficially fitting in that we sometimes settle for. It is so much deeper and rewarding than just coming to church on Sunday and shaking somebody's hand and saying, God bless you, or welcome. It's good to see you. God has called us to a deeper level of belonging to each other, a deeper level of love and commitment to each other. I want to ask this question for you just to ponder in the next couple minutes, but what is one simple way, even this very week, you might be able to invest in a more authentic and loving relationship within your church community here at Reve? What is one simple way that you can offer your love and welcome to somebody in this room? Belonging in the kingdom of God or belonging into the family of God is not just some one-time event that we experience. I have been around church long enough, and I have seen a lot of people over the years, and myself, I have been guilty of this as well, but we oftentimes pursue an experience with God over sometimes God himself. And that one-time experience we feel will carry us through until we get to the next trial or the next difficulty in our lives. And the reality is that we are called into this ongoing relationship with God and his people. This welcoming and this belonging that God calls us to is beyond any emotional interaction or encounter with God. And I firmly believe that encounters and interactions with God are vital to our relationship with him. But not every day is a party or a celebration, and not every day is an emotional moment. Sometimes it's just the drudgery of getting up and going to work or taking out the trash on trash night. But in those, what we seem to be mundane moments, in those everyday disciplines that we have, we can encounter and experience the presence of God as he goes with us. And this is what God is striving for in our lives, is not just feeling welcomed and loved in those moments where we need it, but also understanding that God's presence and welcoming and belonging is available to us when we think we can do it without him. Because if you're like me, you probably wake up some days and don't even think about God. And for many, the challenge becomes is that we get into this habit where the God day, Sunday, becomes the only day that we really think about receiving something from God, when God has something to offer us if we would just stop, pause, and listen. And the beautiful thing is that oftentimes God reveals that love and that welcoming and that belonging that we crave and need through other people. You can't experience all of the love and the belonging that God has for you unless you're receiving that from others and also in turn giving it to them. This is what it means to be part of the healthy family of God. Look, no church is perfect, no person is perfect, but we all should strive for healthy relationships. If you're like me, you might have a temper. You know, I thought I had my temper mastered, and then I got married. And then I thought I had my temper mastered, and I had children. And so I'm still learning self-control. I'm still learning to become more like Jesus every single day. And people that know me kind of at some level always go, I can't imagine you mad, Josh. You're always smiling and laughing and want to have a good time. If you know anything, I don't know how much you talk about the Enneagram, Pastor Sam. I know that he is really a big advocate. My wife is as well, but it's kind of like these personality traits. And mine is a number 7, which means I'm just the have fun kind of guy. I don't want to have a bad time. Everything needs to be a party. And people look at me and they see that in me and they go, how could you be angry? Why would you be angry? And I go, well, you don't always know those things that we struggle with. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but in this context of relationship with God and others is where we really find change. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but I want to just touch on a couple things really quick before we close here. Now, you may ask about this. I think we should just talk about it. You told me at the beginning, Josh, that I don't need to change for God to accept me. You're absolutely right. Then why are you telling me that in the context of relationship I'm going to see change? Well, that's just the reality of what happens when you encounter people. Think about this just for a second. Think about the most dysfunctional relationship you've ever had in your life. And when it ended, or hopefully if it's still going on, have you changed because of that relationship? And I think most of us would probably say, yeah, we have changed. And then think about the healthiest relationship, or the relationship that brings the most joy in your life. How has that impacted or changed you? When we are in relationship, especially in a healthy relationship, it causes transition in our lives in certain ways, but one of the most significant ways, and especially as we strive for healthy relationship with God and other people, one of the biggest ways that we change is through healing. You know, the dysfunctional relationships that we had, maybe even growing up in a dysfunctional home, perhaps we did not have the best model of love and acceptance or belonging in our own families, but when we engage in the effort of loving and belonging community within the context of the local church, we have the opportunity to find healing from some of those hurts and dysfunctions in our past. When our goal as individuals and as a community is to love God and to love others, and sincerely do that, not just with lip service, but sincerely strive to love somebody is to want their benefit and their good more than even your own. And when you're in a community of people that love each other and love God in this manner, it automatically begins this process of healing in our lives of all those broken examples and those dysfunctional examples, or maybe even experiences that we've had of what it means to love. You can't find healing from your past without seeing and experiencing what was originally intended in relationship. And it isn't just on the receiving end. You don't just find healing from receiving love and acceptance or belonging from others and God. You've got to also extend that towards other people. And that is the most difficult thing to do. Or at least for me it is. You know, I have an easy time loving people that I like. People I don't like, it might be just a little bit hard for me to love them. And for me, it's not always a matter of whether I feel like they deserve it or not. For me, it's in my mind, my struggle is always with, I like that person. So even if they're like weird or mean to me, I'm like, even if I like them, I'm going to it's easy for me to love them or forgive them. But it's the people that I don't like that get on my nerves. Even if they're kind and sincere and sweet. It's really hard for me to love that kind of person. But if I'm going to find healing in my life, if I'm going to find true belonging in my life that God is calling me to and drawing me to, and this is a process, friends. It's an ongoing growth and process. But if I'm going to grow in this healing to become a person that truly loves God and others with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love my neighbor as I love myself, if I'm truly going to strive for these goals and kingdom principles that Christ calls us to, I've got to move in that direction and learn to love these people, and I've got to give my love to them even when I don't feel like it. Because the reality is, if you've been married for longer than 2 seconds, is you know that love is more than just this emotion, but it becomes a choice. And the longer that you're in relationship with someone, whether it's a marriage or a friendship, the reality is if you're going to extend love to that person, you're going to have to make the choice to do it. And by God's grace and His Holy Spirit, we can. It doesn't mean it will be easy, but it is possible. And in that process of obedience, this is really what we're talking about when it talks about obedience. In that process of being obedient to the call to love God and to love our neighbor or the people we're in relationship with, we find healing. We find wholeness. We find a greater awareness of God's love for us. See, God's love for you does not change. Before you were aware of God, God's love for you was at its fullest, at its greatest. There was nothing less that God had for you. He had all of this love and embrace for you before you were aware of it. And then for many of us, we have these moments in time that we can pinpoint where we were awakened to the love and the welcoming and the embrace of God that He's calling us to. But the reality is, as people of God, as the family of God, as you continue in relationship with God and as you continue in relationship with God's people, you grow in your awareness of God's love. I can't explain it in any other words, but it's something you knew in your head already, but you experience at a deeper and more impactful level in your life. And if you've ever experienced the love of God and the welcoming presence and the welcoming arms of God, it changes your life. You begin to live as though you always wanted to live. And it's in those moments that God calls us closer to Him, deeper in relationship with Him, so that we can love others. Another way in which we kind of just grow in this is that idea of obedience. You know, one of the byproducts of loving God and welcoming this new family into our lives is the reality not only of God continually revealing Himself, but as He does, He will call us to love in new ways. And it's going to look different for you than it will probably look for me. But God will call you to a greater commitment of love to other people in your life. You know, there's a lot of ways, and I'll just say that I believe that's what obedience is. Obedience to God is loving Him with all that you are and loving those around you in the way that you love yourself. And I believe that as we do that, and as we live in this manner, we find healing and we find a greater commitment to who God is and a greater revelation of Him and His love for us. This type of relationship with God and His family empowers us to live without fear. And I think this is really important for us to grasp today. Is oftentimes the reason we adjust who we are in order to fit in is we fear things like rejection and failure. But when we have an awareness and an experience with God's love, and we also in turn share that love with others, it moves you to a place of confidence that you've never had. And it's not a confidence in who you necessarily are, but it is in the confidence that you have in understanding and experiencing the love, the overwhelming, beautifully accepting, embracing love of God. And the scriptures tell us this in other places, but it says perfect love casts out fear. And I'll just speak for myself. My greatest fear, even to this day, is not being good enough or being rejected by people. You know, part of my personality, like I said, on the 7 on the Enneagram is like, I just want everybody to like me. I just want everybody to like Josh. And I think that's pretty normal for most people, no matter your personality type. Nobody likes to be rejected, especially for who they are. And when we experience the love of God, especially in unexpected ways, it casts out the fear that comes from insecurity. Because we're finding our security, our confidence in the love of God. And the beautiful thing is, we can share that with others. We can welcome others into our lives. We can not put any conditions on what it means to love someone. We can be like Jesus. So I want to encourage you in just some practical ways in which we can love others. Because like every time we say the word love, you may think you know what you're hearing, and I think I know what I'm hearing, but the reality is, as I said earlier, love, true love, is like really this discipline or this choice in our lives to benefit other people, not driven by emotion, not even the emotion we might feel in this moment and the hopefulness that we might have in this moment. But what does it practically look like to live in this type of community? Well, the first and the most simple thing is just support each other. There's somebody in this room right now that's probably going through the most difficult time in years. And this isn't because I'm a prophet, but this is just the reality of the human existence. As some of us are on mountaintops right now, and other us are in the deepest, darkest valleys of our lives. And the only way that we become aware of that is if we push into those people that we say that we love. Push into people, and where they are hurting, you come and encourage and support them in the way that you would want to be supported and loved. And then challenge each other through encouragement to grow in this love. Figure out ways to love somebody better. And I would say for those of you that live with other people, that's a great place to start. And then if we really want to be like Jesus, we love others sacrificially, where it costs us. It's really easy to tell somebody you'll be there for them in a difficult time, but it's a completely different thing when you actually show up. And it costs you. It costs you time, it costs you effort, it costs you emotion. And loving people can be very draining, because sometimes they won't love you back. You might not even get a thank you. Love people sacrificially. Another practical way that we can be people of love is to continually contribute to the community. So we've talked a lot about the interpersonal love and the interpersonal belonging, but there is a communal aspect to this. And sometimes this is countercultural for those of us in the West, because Eastern cultures tend to be very communal. So in the time of Jesus, the Mideast and Far East, they're very communal in the way they approach life. They do a lot together. Even today in certain parts of the world, like in Israel, they have a kibbutz, if you know what a kibbutz is, but that's a communal living farm. It's like kind of like hippies is the best way to think about it. Living together on an old commune, right? All right, communal living. All right, but in the West, we're very individualistic. You pull your stuff up by your bootstraps and you just make it on your own. But as people of faith, we realize that there is an individual component or an interpersonal component to loving and belonging and welcoming individuals into our lives and putting ourselves into theirs. But there is this communal aspect that God calls us to, because we are not called to live isolated as people of God. We're called to live within the context of what we call the church or a community. And so there's communal ways in which we can express our love and belonging towards others into our community of faith. And so for you, that would mean right here at Reveille. So what are ways in which you can express your communal love or your communal belonging to this local community here? And it's really kind of, again, simple when we think about it in practical ways. Is first show up, and I don't just mean like, hey, show up on Sundays. Because really the reality is life can be difficult, and sometimes you just wake up on Sunday and you just can't make it. But showing up means more than just being present on a Sunday morning. There are other ways that you can show up for the people and for Pastor Sam and those here. Maybe something breaks down and you're great at fixing things. Maybe you've got those kind of skill sets. Offer yourself to the community. We all have individual gifts and abilities and resources that others in this room do not have. So I challenge you, as you commit to being a loving people, a welcoming people, and a community that belongs to each other, that you commit just to showing up, being there, communicating with your family. Another way is to serve in other capacities on a regular basis. Doesn't mean you have to be in Royal Rangers every week, right? I love Royal Rangers, by the way. But there are ways for you to bring service on a regular basis to this community. If you don't know, you can talk to Pastor Sam. I'm sure he'd be happy to point out ways in which you could serve the community. And another way, another way just candidly is to give financially. Now some of you might say, well, I give already. Awesome. Great. But there's this principle that Jesus talked about that I think is often overlooked or kind of misstated. We use it kind of more of a way of an evaluation, where Jesus said, hey, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And we kind of use that oftentimes in the church world to say, oh, look where they're spending money, that's really where their heart is. And there is truth to that. There is truth to that evaluation of like, if you truly value something, you're going to spend time or money there, right? But there's also this discipline that can come with that. If you want to have a greater heart for God and the kingdom of God, if you want to have a greater heart for the people in this community and you don't, one of the ways you can do that is start to contribute. Because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I believe it's a growth principle, this reality that as you contribute to, and Pastor Sam did not ask me to say this, by the way, I need to clarify that. Nobody has pushed me or twisted my arm at all. But the reality is, if you don't feel connected or that you don't belong to what's going on in this place, start serving and start giving. Your heart will follow. Again, we have this idea about love that our emotions have to be in it instead of really just making it a simple choice. If you say you love God and you love these people in this community, contribute. Look, and look, there's no measure. It's not, nobody's looking at how much you've given, but the reality is if you want to bring yourself into this community in a deeper committed way, and you want to contribute, and you really want to love, and you want to receive love, you've got to give. It's going to cost us, no matter what. And I'm not talking about financially. This is just the reality. And it's a discipline for people of God to do these things. It's a discipline to love somebody through actions more than just saying, I love you. And so I want to challenge you in this moment and in this time. And Pastor Sam, you and whoever's coming up can help us to close. But the reality is I want to challenge you with this question again. Belonging. Welcoming and love. Look, there's no condition on God's love, and I know Pastor Sam well enough to know that he loves you, no matter what. But I want to challenge you to what level you want to grow in welcoming, belonging, and loving God and others. This community of believers called Reveille will only be as good or great as the people that make this community up. You are Reveille. You are the church. You are the children of God. You set the tone for how welcoming, how loving, how embracing this community will be. It's something we do together. Model it for others. Model it for yourself. Choose it. Right? Christ chose to come. He could have loved us from above, but he chose to come and make a pathway for us to know the Father and be healed. And that pathway is the pathway of love. It's the pathway of Jesus.